That was intense. I don't know any jokes or I would tell one.
I use this one with Cassandra a lot at home because we always talk about kids and their new slang that they use nowadays, like that's cap and all this stuff. And I tell Cassandra, I was like, that's straight camping. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, it's intense.
Yeah, that
You know?
that's a good one.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, hey, I'm Aaron Cochran by Tennessee Dirt Team Lane. I'm here with Jordan Mitchell. Um, she was born in Tennessee. She went running and screaming out of the state when she was in her early 20s, late teens. Moved to Colorado, did the most Denver things you possibly could think of, and then realized Tennessee was her home, so she had come running on back. Jordan, you want to tell us a little bit about your story and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jordan Mitchell. I'm a realtor here in Middle Tennessee with the By Tennessee Dirt Team. It's Southern Middle Realty, Keller Williams. And I myself and my now husband, whenever we were just dating, we moved to Colorado in 2014. We were both born and raised in Tullahoma, and we just needed to get out. We needed to go and spread our wings and figure things out on our own. So we just took the little money that we had, we loaded everything up in a moving van, put my car on a dolly, and drove across the country to get to Colorado.
So, what drove you out of Tennessee? Like, what? Why Colorado? Why leaving Tennessee? Like, what was calling you in Colorado?
So a lot of it was people had gone before us that we knew, and just the outside, like so much beautiful scenery, so many activities to do outside. Everybody has a dog in Colorado, so it was very pet friendly, um, more so dog friendly, I would say. And then they have the most days of sunshine for the year out of every state, and lots of opportunities. So it was really growing and expanding, and there were a ton of people moving there. I think at the time it was 200 a day. So, and that was, like I said, that was 10 years ago. So, I don't know. We just thought that we needed something different. And obviously, like, I don't talk politics. I'm not political, but their politics are way different than the politics here and the ways that we were raised. Tennessee is the Bible Belt. And so we wanted to get out to somewhere that we thought was going to be totally different and see what it took to figure things out on our own without any outside influences.
So 10 years ago, everybody was moving to Denver. 200 days. That's an extreme number. I don't have the statistics in front of me about people moving to Tennessee today, but it ebb and flows. Cassandra and I, when we relocated, actually, I was born in Ohio. We relocated to California, and that was back, when California was California. It was blue hair, blonde eyes, California raisins, surfing. Like it was the place to be. So that's essentially what Colorado was and Denver 10 years ago for you guys. The promise of, the most sunshine in the world, most vitamin D, walk your dog every day of the week. So what did you learn when you got there? Did you guys have jobs lined up? Like, how did you guys prepare for it? What did you learn once you arrived?
So I was 20, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, actually, we had just been together for a little over a year, and he was 19. Neither of us had a job. We didn't have any place to live, and we had another friend that wanted to go with us. And so our credit wasn't super great, but we did have money saved. And so once we finally found a place, like I said, we went into Denver. And that was, like the place that we thought that we wanted to be or needed to be. Turns out they actually have a ban. They did have a ban. They don't anymore. They had a ban on pit bulls, the breed of dog, and we had a pit bull. And so,
In the entire town of Denver?
yeah, so the city had a ban on the breed pit bulls. They've done away with it now. They did away with it while we were there. But we quickly learned that Denver was a bit much. I had never lived in a large city and never wanted to live in a large city, and I didn't realize how intense it was gonna be, how many people, and, like, navigating the very small roads and things like that, so we decided that that wasn't gonna be the place for us.
How long were you guys in Denver for?
So we actually arrived and stayed in a hotel for 1 week. And then during that time, we were going out, driving down south, trying to find places that better suited us. And at the time, Colorado Springs was where we landed.
So you guys had everything in tow with you. You guys essentially set out. You didn't know exactly where you wanted to go, and you just showed up and started exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, we had talked to, like I said, some people that came from here or, surrounding cities that had moved out there and were having a great time. It was a fun experience. And, we were fairly careless. Like it was just us and our dogs, and we didn't have kids and we didn't have anything crazy. Like we didn't have careers and we actually didn't have college degrees either. So, really, we didn't have much to lose whenever it came to making a huge decision, and we actually had a lot of support. I mean, there were some people that were really upset, like family members that just didn't understand, didn't want us away where, they didn't feel like we were maybe safe, but that was kind of the point.
Yeah, it's sometimes you have to go against the grain in order to accomplish your goals. And I think a lot of people that are relocating, even into Tennessee or from other states to other states, a lot of them come across the same issues of, how do I navigate this? And, there was, when we moved, we had a lot of pushback and things like that from other people, but there was, those were selfish thoughts, just like your family and friends and stuff like that that were thinking you guys were crazy and didn't think it was going to be safe for you guys. Like only you guys know, like, and where do we think everybody else in Denver came from? They all relocated from somewhere. There are some people, of course, that were born there, but they go out there. There's people that live there and are happy. So why can't you go there and be happy? So what did you discover when you were there? Like what drew you back? Like what was Denver lacking that didn't keep you there? Like you're clearly back in Tullahoma now.
So, we went in December of 2014, and we were able to, it was actually the very end of December, and I think we moved into our apartment like the first week of January, if I'm not mistaken, of January 2015. Um, we were able to get into a rental house like 14 months later, and we actually did really good in Colorado. We were super successful, but once we had our son in 2020 and we had like the pandemic and like all of these different issues happened, um, it kind of made us have a change of heart, um, where we wanted to come back to where family and friends were. So having a child, wanting to have more children, and then the cost of living going up, and you're like feeling like, okay, we have really good jobs now and we're doing really good for ourselves, and we still feel like we're barely surviving. So there was, a couple of different things that brought us back, but ultimately it was just the comforts of home.
Would you ever move back to Denver?
Yeah, so we have talked about it. We really did love it out there, and it really fit with like our lifestyle, I want to say, like who we are as people. But we bought a house in 2018, like right before we got married. I had actually just landed an excellent job in the natural gas industry, and I was able to afford, without my husband's credit or his income, the home. And that was like outstanding to me, like a dream come true. And we actually rented out our basement to someone at a huge discount compared to what she was finding out there, because it was just outrageous. And I think the things that would deter that would be, we were paying $1,300 a month for one child for daycare, and it was a private babysitter. And we realized that even making the money that we were making, it would be fairly unreasonable to add another child because there's a little discount, but not much. And $2,600 a month for childcare just for 2 kids is pretty outrageous. Um, they don't have tax on food, so, like, groceries are not taxed. So, I got used to that, but I think that they do have an income tax, and I don't think that Tennessee does, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
So there's just a couple of different things, and then obviously, like I said, I don't like to talk politics, but there is a difference in politics between the 2 states as well.
So you moved back here. Did you just jump into real estate? Like, how long have you been back in Tullahoma now?
So we moved back to Tullahoma in March of 2022. So almost, well, actually, right at 2.5 years. And I actually secured a job. Like I said, I had been working in the natural gas industry in Colorado since 2017. It was like 4.5 years whenever I went to leave. And so I was able to secure a job at Arnold Air Force Base, like an administrative position, because I had some experience in that as well. And that was in February of 2022. So I knew that I wanted to have a job whenever we were coming back because my husband had planned on starting his own business. And it was important that we got back to work as soon as possible. So I actually couldn't start that job until June because I had to have a background check and all that stuff because it's a military base and it's very, very intense, very strict for what they have to do to check your background. So I didn't get to start that until June. And I actually then went and had my second son in November, but I had a little bit of bed rest there. And so while I was on that bed rest, I actually discovered a position was open at Tullahoma Utilities. And I had a utility background. So I applied for that and I started that position after my maternity leave, which was in February of 2023. And I actually began my coursework for real estate in May of 2023, and I ended up getting my license officially in January of 2024. So I did not go straight into real estate.
So you guys moved to Colorado with no job. You came back to Tennessee with no jobs, and you guys are just free spirits.
So technically, I had a job whenever I came back, but Leo didn't. So he had planned on the business. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to secure this job. But you're right. Whenever we got here, I was just waiting to start that job because they kept telling me, like, we're waiting on your background check. We're waiting on your background check. And it was like, I was getting concerned because I knew there was nothing on my background, but it was taking forever. So from March to June, we didn't have any income at all.
So give some advice to people that are watching this that may be like, how do I find a job when I move to another state? Like, what's the best? Do you have any tips or advice on how to reach out to those people? Because of course, like getting a loan, like you have to have a job, those types of things. Like what's the best way that you feel that someone could job search remotely when they're looking to move to a new town?
So I feel like it helped me a lot whenever we were moving back to Tullahoma because I did have a lot of friends and family here. And I I tried for months. So, like, we actually decided that we wanted to move back in 2021. It was like September or October. We actually had found out in September that we were expecting our second child, and then we had a loss. So, that kind of like steamrolled us into like getting on the ball and being like, okay, we want to sell our house and we want to move. Like, what does this look like? And at first, I wasn't really all for it. And so, once we made the decision, I started looking. So I think it was probably October, November timeframe that we decided, like, okay, we're going to do this. And I started going online to all of the, job boards. So there's like Indeed and LinkedIn, and a couple of others, but I really like those 2. And I went on pages for Tullahoma, and again, I think that it helped me because I also reached out to family and friends and was like, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need to make." And I mean, it was a shock because going from where I had built myself up in the utility industry in Colorado, I had to take almost a $20,000 a year pay cut, to come back here.
Do you feel the incomes are less here in Tennessee, job for job, if you were doing the same exact thing, same level of pay you would receive in Colorado versus here? Like, what should people expect moving to Tennessee? Do you think it's
So, I think that it's comparable. The thing was, it really didn't affect me that much because of the fact that things were so much more expensive in Colorado, and when you're moving to a place like Colorado, like, if I had to do it over again, as far as finding a job, I would have definitely looked differently. So, like, I didn't even try whenever we moved there originally because I just had savings and I was like, "Okay, we'll figure it out." But whenever you have kids, which is why I secured a job coming back here because we had a kid and we knew that we were responsible for somebody else. So, I think that it's comparable, especially because of, like, the different taxes and things like that, and it is a good bit more expensive in Colorado. So you have your insurance is higher on everything, except for health. I think it's pretty comparable, but you have to think about the fact that they get hail a lot. So your car insurance is higher. I mean, we had in the 8 years that we were there, 3 or 4 vehicles that got intense hail damage, and I'm talking softball size hail. So
that's insane.
yeah.
Like, that
Um,
would kill someone.
Yeah, it could. I actually tried to run out in it at one point because I was at work and we had a hailstorm and it was softball size hail and it was pummeling my truck and I just had never experienced that before and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta put my truck somewhere," and they were like, "If you go out there, it will kill you." And I was like, "No, my truck." So, yeah, it was a serious struggle. So, I think that back to your question, it is comparable because of those things. I mean, you have utilities that are more expensive, but coming back here, you have to realize that your phone bill stays the same, your subscriptions stay the same, your possibly health insurance could stay the same depending on if you have your own plan or not. And, things like that are going to be the same. You're still going to have to pay for your vehicle payments, but there are things that kind of ebb and flow as well.
When we relocated here, I felt like I think cost of living is a little bit less as well. When I say that, like, you move to a small town like Tullahoma, like, there's not like people in other states you can probably attest to. They go out to eat frequently. Like, you might go out to eat every lunch hour at work instead of taking lunch to work and things like that. And like here, it's just a different way of life. Like, yeah, a Friday or a Saturday night, yeah, it's the local Hardee's is going to have a line around the building. But it's interesting. People here are more breakfast people. So, like, I would say a good portion of people's expenditures go into, fast food and entertainment and dining out. And people here tend to keep to themselves more and try to find low cost or no cost things to do. So, even groceries here aren't really more expensive than anywhere else in the nation. And you have a lot more, I would say, farmers market and, small town farmer type opportunities here that you don't have in other parts of the country. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So, even though if you're making the same amount of money, your quality of life could still become better.
Yeah, and that's a big thing as well was like I said, my husband wanted to start a business and it was not going to really be a thing for us in Colorado. So there were a few things like having another child. As I said, whenever we found out we were expecting, it was a surprise. Like we weren't necessarily trying and we were excited. And so the loss was really hard, but it kind of like shocked us into being like, okay, maybe we don't stay here because we probably won't have a good quality of life, like you were saying. And we did eat out a lot there because there were so many options. I mean, like there's just so much to choose from. And here, There's not. And when you start a small business in a town that you've lived in your entire life, aside from, the 8 years that you left, like you come back and those people, most of them are still here. You have your family that usually most of them are still here. And, our situation is obviously different than other people. Like everyone has their individual circumstances, but we knew that if we wanted any hope of having a life where we felt like we could get ahead, that we could not do that in the situation that we were currently in.
Yeah, I mean, you came back to Tennessee and you jumped into real estate, not having any real estate experience, and you've been pretty successful so far in real estate, hitting the ground running, and reaching out to your sphere of influence, your families and friends. And it's like as soon as you became an agent, it's like everybody came out of the woodwork, and I was like, oh, I trust Jordan. Like, I need to have her take care of my real estate transaction. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good feeling because I feel like, you try to stay in contact with people, but you have so many people that you've met throughout your life, and especially me, like going to music festivals and concerts and just meeting a lot of people. Like, obviously, I love to talk.
Nothing about you screams music festival, by the way.
Yeah, that's a lie. So I mean, it's been really nice because the people that you think will support you don't always, but then you have other people that, like you said, just come out and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll use you for our transaction." So, it's been really reassuring that, the way that you treat people whenever you're younger, like middle school and high school, because those were the years that I was here meeting people, obviously elementary school too, but your kids. And so knowing that the way that I treated those people during those years made an impact is really cool, especially having kids myself now, because it's like, okay, if someone is mistreated during those years of their life, they're going to remember it. And when people come to me and they're like, "Hey, I remember you for always being really kind to me," and like they put their trust in me because of those things, it's awesome.
So if you were to have somebody to call you today or tomorrow or whatever and say, hey, I live in Colorado, or I live in Wisconsin, or I live in California. Like, what best advice would you give them for them inquiring about moving across country? They just said, "Hey, Jordan, I saw your story, and I'm just really interested." Like, if you were to give me your best advice for me moving my family and my husband and my two kids and my dog across country, like, what advice do you think you would give them?
So I would ask them a lot of questions first because the situation is going to make or break the things that I'm going to give you as far as advice. So if you have, like you said, kids and animals, I would certainly have to look at daycare. Do you want to put your child in daycare or pre-K, or are they in school? Where do you want them to go to school? What matters to you? What's most important to you about where they go to school or where they go to a daycare or a babysitter? Next is, okay, have you looked at the cost of living? So, can you speak to someone, even me, and check and see what is the normal rates on utilities? What are you going to be paying? Is your car insurance going to change? There are just so many details. And then, as far as it comes for a home, which is the biggest thing, like for us, we didn't want to sell our home and buy one here because we knew that we weren't going to be here to look. And I honestly didn't realize how easy it was to have someone go and look through the home for you, but you have to have someone you trust. And at the time, with us not having secure jobs and me knowing that my husband was going into self employment, I didn't want to sign us up for owning a home because it was very serious, and it was like a thing that you're signing up for, like a big commitment. And so there are options. Like, you can find what you need in maybe another city or another town over. And if you need to rent for a while, that's okay. Or if you need to do like we did for a couple of months and live in a camper, that's okay. Um, I
Relatable. We did that too.
Yeah, so, like, I'm always gonna advocate for what's gonna be best for your situation, like, I'm not gonna just tell you, "Hey, you have to buy a home," but if you know that you're moving somewhere, like with us, it could have been perfect for our situation because we know people here. And I'm not saying that you have to know people, but like if you know where you're going and you're going there for a job and you have all those things set up, like it could go really smoothly if you have the right realtor who's asking the right questions and advocating for what you need for your family.
So everybody's heard like the cart before the horse or the chicken or the egg. What comes first in your opinion? And it varies. Like some people call me and they're looking to move to the state, and do they find the job and then the home, or do they find the home and then the job? Like, does the perfect job, are you going to find the perfect job next to every house, or can you find the perfect house near the job? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the job is going to be really important. And like I said, that's going to be based on the person. You know, if you have a college degree and you can go anywhere, then great. You know, you're pretty flexible. But if you have like me and you had experience in one industry and in office work, then you need to be in a place that is going to pay you what you're worth for the work that you're doing.
So a lot of people we talk, it's you've heard the term a country mile, or a Texas mile, things like that. What is it, the difference in, at least in California where we were for such a long time, it's most people commuted within 30 minutes of work. Here to drive an hour, hour and a half to work is not uncommon. Like where we live here, we're an hour to two Costco's. In Tullahoma, we can be in Murfreesboro at Costco, or we can be in Huntsville, Alabama at Costco. Like it's not uncommon to drive a distance, but realize when you move to another part of the country, it's how do I say it? Like every time you leave the house, it's an adventure because you've never been there before. So, I think people need to not be afraid of driving a further distance unless they're looking to move to a metropolitan area, and they're going to have a job they need conveniently located near them. But it's not uncommon to drive an hour, hour and a half to that job, even here. So we have friends here. We commute to Murfreesboro often when we needed to because we have an office in Murfreesboro as well. So, um, but yeah, Denver, when you lived there, what was the average commute? How would you feel that?
So, whenever I lived in Colorado Springs, and I got the job at Black Hills Energy, natural gas industry, their location that I got the job at was in Fountain. So it was 30 minutes south of me. And of course, I had to drop my son off at the babysitter, but thankfully that was like right around the corner. So it was 5 minutes to the babysitter and then 30 minutes south to work. But then we actually bought a house in Fountain, our second home. So we sold our first home and bought another home in Fountain. And I actually got a promotion up to Monument, Palmer Lake to be exact. So at that point, I was driving from Fountain to Colorado Springs to our babysitter because I wasn't going to change her. She was awesome. So that was 30 minutes. And then I was driving another 30 minutes up to Palmer Lake. And it was like up the interstate and then on a back road for a couple of miles. It was beautiful out there. So it was about an hour and then an hour back, all included. So I was driving 2 hours a day.
Yeah, on top of an 8 hour plus workday, probably as well. So, well, if you were to give advice to anybody relocating, what would be your number one tip or trick, to relocating to Tennessee or even another state? What do you think? If you were to give them a one line, what would you do? This is your must have moving.
Do your research and give yourself time.
Yep. Time is going to be key. I think my advice I would give is find somebody you trust. I can tell you that when we moved, um, just having an agent here that we trusted, like we told the agent, like we had them looking all over for us, and they were like, I could refer you to somebody else. I'm like, no, I trust you. I just want to talk to you. So you need to have somebody that you can do. And that doesn't necessarily have to be an agent. It could be a friend that moved ahead of you. Like you had friends move to Colorado, or people that you grew up with.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like I'll say this lastly, but you asked about the job in the house, and It's gonna just depend on the circumstance because if you're like us and you're realtors, then it's a little bit more flexible. You know, if you find that perfect house, then it doesn't really matter because, like you said, you can commute. So definitely just do your research and, like you said, find someone that you trust, and it can be really smooth and really, really a cool experience.
Well, Jordan, we appreciate you having on today, and we are grateful that you are back in Tennessee because otherwise, it'd be pointless having this conversation if you lived in Colorado, and you wouldn't be on our team, and we wouldn't be growing and be successful as we are without agents like you. So, thank you so much for being on today, and yeah, if you want to reach out to Jordan, we'll make sure her contact information is in the video below. Have a great week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.